Martin Luther King Jr., an iconic figure in American history, was a Baptist minister, activist, and leader of the civil rights movement in the United States. His tireless efforts and nonviolent approach to protest played a pivotal role in dismantling segregation and promoting civil rights for African Americans. This biographical essay will delve into the life, accomplishments, and lasting impact of Martin Luther King Jr., shedding light on his early years, his involvement in the civil rights movement, his leadership, and the enduring legacy he left behind. Early life and education. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia, on January 15, 1929. He was Reverend Martin Luther King Sr.'s second child and Alberta Williams King. Raised in a devout Christian household, King Jr. was exposed to the teachings of nonviolent protest from a young age. His father served as a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, and the church played a significant role in shaping King Jr.'s spiritual and moral convictions. King Jr. received his early education at segregated schools, where he experienced firsthand the injustices and racial discrimination that plagued African Americans during the era of Jim Crow laws. Despite facing racial challenges, he excelled academically and graduated from Booker T. Washington High School at the age of 15. He went on to attend Morehouse College, a historically black institution, and graduated with a degree in sociology in 1948. During his time at Morehouse College, King Jr. was deeply influenced by the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi and his philosophy of nonviolent resistance. These ideas would become the cornerstone of King Jr.'s approach to civil rights activism later in life. Entry into ministry and activism. Martin Luther King Jr. continued his father's legacy, entered the ministry and attended Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, where he honed his theological and philosophical knowledge. While at Crozer, he delved into the works of influential thinkers such as Reinhold Niebuhr and Walter Rauschenbusch, which further shaped his beliefs about social justice and human rights. In 1955, King Jr. earned his Ph.D. in systematic theology from Boston University. During this time, he met Coretta Scott, whom he married in 1953. Coretta would go on to become a steadfast companion and supporter of King Jr. throughout his activism. King Jr.'s entry into activism was catalyzed by the Montgomery Bus Boycott of 1955 to 1956. Rosa Parks, an African-American woman, refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama, leading to her arrest. In response, the local African-American community, led by King Jr., organized a boycott of the city's bus system. This nonviolent protest lasted for 381 days, leading to a Supreme Court ruling that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. The civil rights movement and nonviolent protest. The success of the Montgomery Bus Boycott propelled Martin Luther King Jr. to the forefront of the civil rights movement. He became the leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, an organization committed to achieving civil rights through nonviolent protest. Under King Jr.'s guidance, the SCLC became a driving force in the fight against racial segregation and discrimination. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, King Jr. led numerous nonviolent protests, including sit-ins, freedom rides, and marches aimed at challenging racial inequality. Perhaps one of the most significant events during this period was the Birmingham Campaign in 1963. Facing harsh police brutality, King Jr. and other activists staged peaceful protests, leading to the desegregation of public facilities and the eventual passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr., during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. This historic event drew an estimated 250,000 people to the nation's capital, and King Jr.'s powerful words resonated with millions across the country. His speech called for an end to racism and segregation, envisioning a future where people would be judged by their character rather than the color of their skin. The Voting Rights Act and Selma campaign. In 1965, King Jr. turned his attention to voting rights. African Americans faced numerous obstacles, such as poll taxes and literacy tests, which effectively prevented them from exercising their right to vote. King Jr. and the SCLC organized a voting rights campaign in Selma, Alabama, which culminated in the iconic march from Selma to Montgomery. The marchers were met with brutal violence from state troopers in what became known as Bloody Sunday. The public outcry over these events prompted President Lyndon B. Johnson to push for the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which aimed to protect the voting rights of African Americans, the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Sadly, at the age of 39, Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4, 1968. His death sent shockwaves throughout the nation and sparked a period of mourning and civil unrest. However, his dream and legacy lived on. In recognition of his contributions to civil rights and his commitment to nonviolent protest, Martin Luther King Jr. posthumously received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. Today, his birthday is celebrated as a national holiday, designated as Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and serves as a day of service in the United States. Martin Luther King Jr.'s influence extended far beyond his lifetime. His work laid the foundation for the ongoing struggle for racial equality and justice. He inspired countless individuals to take up the mantle of activism and fight for human rights. Furthermore, his approach to nonviolent resistance became a model for future social justice movements worldwide, from South Africa's anti-apartheid movement to India's struggle for independence. Martin Luther King Jr. was a remarkable leader whose contributions to the civil rights movement reshaped the course of American history. His commitment to nonviolence, his passion for justice, and his eloquent speeches continue to inspire generations to stand up against injustice and work towards a more equitable society. As we celebrate his legacy, it is essential to remember that the fight for civil rights is ongoing. While significant progress has been made since King Jr.'s time, systemic racism and inequality persist. The principles of equality and justice that he championed are as relevant today as they were during the civil rights era. As we honor his memory, we must also continue to uphold his dream and work towards a more just and inclusive society for all. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to join our community. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share this content with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay awesome!